Silly season dominoes continue to fall in NASCAR as Daniel Suarez is expected to return to Trackhouse racing in 2023, and the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series schedule is expected to release in the next 6 to 8 weeks, and NASCAR wants to have one new big event added to the schedule. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to go ahead and start off with paint schemes and sponsorship news first. Let's jump into those really quickly. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Joey Gase's 2022 Spark scheme that we're going to see in the Truck Series race tomorrow night at Knoxville. Honestly, I really love this paint scheme. It's very simple, but it looks really classic. You've got the black, but you've also got the lightning strikes on the side of the car and the truck. I think it looks absolutely amazing, and I'm excited to see on the racetrack at Knoxville. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Carson Osbar's 2022 Worldwide Express updated scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Knoxville. This one is different than the one they had last weekend at Sonoma, and I think this one actually looks really exciting. I love the yellow numbers on the side. I think it really makes the car much different. I'm a big fan of having yellow numbers on these cars. I think it looks amazing, and I'm excited to see on the racetrack this weekend at Knoxville. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chandler Smith's 2022 Charge Me scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Knoxville. I think this is different than the other Charge Me scheme that we've seen. I think they've inverted the scheme, which I do think this paint scheme is actually decent in my opinion. And I hope this car truck has a good run this weekend at Knoxville. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Thad Moffitt's 2022 Clean Harbor scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Knoxville. I absolutely love this paint scheme. The red and the white do a really good job contrasting each other, and it's very simplistic as well, but it looks absolutely amazing, and I'm excited to see on the racetrack in the Truck Series race this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Tyler Carpenter's 2022 Aggressive scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Knoxville. Of course, Tyler Carpenter making his Truck Series debut this weekend. I think it looks absolutely incredible. I think did a really awesome job in it, and I'm very excited to see Tyler Carpenter making his debut this weekend at Knoxville. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sam Mayer's 2022 Hux Market scheme that we're going to see later this year at, I think, Nashville, and I think also Road America as well, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, no, it's Nashville, I think, then Indianapolis or Road America, whatever. This paint scheme looks pretty solid in my opinion. Love the fact Sam Mayer has a new sponsor coming on. And I think his paint scheme looks really great, and I'm excited to see on the racetrack later this season. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Devin Rouse's 2022 Surprise scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Knoxville in his first truck race of 2022. Pretty exciting to see that Devin Rouse is making his NASCAR Truck Series race for the start of the year. I think his paint scheme looks pretty solid, and I'm looking forward to seeing the racetrack this weekend at Knoxville. This next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Dylan Westbrook's 2022 Townline Variety scheme that we'll see this weekend in his Truck Series debut at Knoxville. Pretty cool to see that Dylan Westbrook's making his debut. I think his paint scheme looks really solid, and I'm excited to see on the racetrack this weekend at Knoxville. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brett Moffitt's 2022 Concrete Supply Destiny Home scheme that we're going to see in the Truck Series race at Knoxville as he's driving to 22 this weekend. Honestly, I think his paint scheme looks pretty decent in my opinion. I think a Destiny Homes works very good. I wish there was a little more on this paint scheme, to be honest with you, but I do think it looks pretty decent, and hopefully Brett Moffitt will have a good run for the 22 team and help them in the owners' points. And the final paint scheme we are taking a look at is Eric Almirola's 2022 HaasDueling.com scheme that we're going to see later this season. This, of course, being linked yesterday. Honestly, I think this paint scheme looks really good. We don't get a really great image. When that does fully get image, we'll probably look at a better image of it. But from what I can tell, I love they're kind of doing a throwback to the Haas tooling schemes. I think it does look pretty solid, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the racetrack here later this season. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Coca-Cola. As it was reported by Adam Stern on, I believe, Wednesday evening, the Coca-Cola ran an ad in USA Today celebrating Daniel Suarez's win at Sonoma. Of course, Daniel Suarez picking up his first career NASCAR Cup Series victory. We've seen a lot of people really promoting Daniel Suarez's victory. We've seen many people congratulate Daniel Suarez and Coca-Cola, which, of course, Daniel Suarez is a Coca-Cola racing family driver. It makes a lot of sense why they're going to promote this, but this is a huge win for NASCAR in so many areas, and it's, again, really awesome to see that Coca-Cola is basically promoting it. I think it is amazing and very exciting to see for sure. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Sheamus. As it was revealed yesterday that Sheamus is going to wave the green flag for the start of the Cup Series race next weekend in Nashville. This will be the second time I believe Sheamus has been at a NASCAR event. I believe he's already earlier this year, either at the Daytona 500 or the LA Clash later this year. earlier this year. And I will say having Sheamus, who apparently of course works, who's part of the WWE, I think having him come along and do this, I think is generally really, really exciting news. And I'm very happy to see that he's going to be waving the green flag. I think that's really exciting and great to see for sure. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Lori Collier-Warren. As it was revealed this morning that Lori Collier-Warren has been named the president of Richmond Raceway. She will be the first female president in the track's history, and I think the 4th or 5th in NASCAR history to be a president, and it will be the 4th or 5th in the history of Richmond. Really excited to see she is getting an opportunity. She's worked as a media executive, I think, in the Richmond area and in Virginia sales for a very, very long time. I think she absolutely deserves this opportunity. I think this is really awesome. Massive congratulations to her and good luck to her as she will be working at Richmond. Pretty exciting news for sure. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the National Fair Board. We've been talking about the National, we haven't really talked much about the National Fair Board really recently, but very recently Bob Pockers reported yesterday that the National Fair Board says that there was no update on the Bristol proposal at the Fair Board meeting yesterday. They still are waiting for the 5th person to get voted in. Once they get a 5th person voted into the National Fair Board, then they can go right ahead and start making some moves on the National Fairgrounds. I do think will happen at some point. I think by the end of this year, I think they'll get someone on that fair board, and I think that's why I've been having issues going forward with this, is I think the fact they haven't gotten that 5th person on the fair board yet, I think is playing a massive factor in why they're having issues getting stuff done. So I really hope they get the situation sorted out in the near future so they can go ahead and start making some moves so we can get the fairgrounds back up and running and the project back up and running. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Jeremy Mayfield. As it was reported, I believe yesterday or 2 days ago, that Jeremy Mayfield is going to be competing in the Grand National Super Series at Franklin County. I can't remember exactly with which team, but he will be racing in Franklin County, I believe, this weekend. This is super excited to see Jeremy Mayfield getting back behind the wheel. I believe Jeremy Mayfield's been racing late models and I think dirt for a very long time, really since he's not been involved in NASCAR. But Jeremy Mayfield's been getting back in the spotlight over the last few months, and it's amazing to see Jeremy Mayfield continuing to race, even though it's not for NASCAR anymore. I think it's great to see that Jeremy Mayfield is continuing to race. We know the history of what happened there, but I think it's amazing to see that Jeremy Mayfield wants to continue to race. I think racing's been his blood his whole life, and I think it's amazing to see that Jeremy Mayfield wants to continue racing in the world of racing. I think it's really exciting, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Josh Sims. As it was revealed on Wednesday afternoon that Josh Sims is going to become a host rotation on NASCAR Race Up, and he'll be hosting every single Wednesday going forward. This is really awesome for Josh Sims. One of my favorite things about the Fox broadcast, and every broadcast I see, whether it's the Truck Series or the Xfinity Series, one thing I love is the addition of Josh Sims. Josh Sims, I think, has done a really solid job with Fox. He brings a lot of energy and excitement to the broadcast when he's on pit road and speaks to drivers, and I think he's done a really good job. For a guy who's only been doing this for about a year with Fox, I think he's done a very excellent job, and I think this eventually could lead him maybe do some commentary in the future. We've seen Caitlin Vincey, she's gotten a bigger role there, and I think we're going to see, I think it's really awesome to see that Josh Sims is getting an opportunity. He deserves it. I think there's a huge opportunity for him, and massive congratulations to him on getting this opportunity to work in Fox Sports on FS1. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Michigan Speedway. As it was revealed yesterday that infield camping for Michigan Speedway has been sold out for the NASCAR weekend for Michigan in August. Now, basically seats in the grandstands and other areas, I think in the suites, are still available currently at the moment. But this is the first time, I believe, in 10 years that the Michigan infield has been sold out. We've been seeing a lot of NASCAR races where attendance has generally been going up. One, I think a lot more fans are going out nowadays and wanting to do more stuff. But another big reason I think that this is happening currently at the moment right now is basically because of the fact that I think we're seeing a lot more people interested in this next-gen car. So I think that's why I'm seeing huge attendance increases currently at this moment. I think this is absolutely amazing and absolutely incredible to see that the attendance continues to be having big numbers. I think it's great, and I'm very happy to see that attendance has been sold out in the infield. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Glory to God Racing. We've got two reports on Glory to God Racing. We're going to talk about the more positive report, and then right after that, we'll talk about the negative report. But Tim Veens revealed the drivers will be racing in the upcoming races. We already know, I believe, Bryson Mitchell or Brandon Mitchell will be driving the 46 this weekend at Knoxville. Chase Janes is going to drive the 46 at Nashville next weekend, so he'll be making, I believe, his second or third start with the team this season. Caden Honeycutt, who's already driven for this team this year, is going to be making 3 more runs this season. He'll be driving the 47 at Nashville, then a race at Richmond later this year, and then a race at Kansas. And finally, as revealed, Brendan Poole will be driving the 46 for the team at Pocono. I think it's a pretty solid driver lineup. Chase Janes has some decent starts in Argo this year. Has had some really good runs. Caden Honeycutt had a really strong run going at Martinsville before, unfortunately, he, I believe, got involved in a wreck that took him out of contention. And Brendan Poole's been getting that team top 30s. So I really hope that these guys can generally have a really strong runs with Glory to God Racing. We know the story behind Glory to God Racing. We don't know the future of that team long term. This may be the last 2 races for Glory to God Racing with everything going on, but it is what it is, and we'll see what happens. But really cool opportunity for all of them. I think the goal for them is to get a top 30 and help the 46 and 47 trucks get some honors points. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk once again about Glory to God Racing, unfortunately in a negative light. So, I've talked about Glory to God Racing and the troubles going on behind the scenes. Travis McCauley, who was supposed to drive the 47 truck for Glory to God Racing, decided to have an interview for Matthew Burrows from the 10ben.com. And he revealed some really interesting information. So, Travis McCauley was supposed to make the start. Now, he had an issue getting his drug test through, but eventually come to find out the drug test was good to go. He revealed that he was over there, and there were parts and pieces of that truck that were not together, and things were not correct. And Travis basically said to Tim Veens, the owner of the team, basically said that there's a lot of stuff wrong with this truck, and he said it's your fault, basically, quintessentially, and basically what happened was really your fault. So after that got spilled, Ryan Bell, who's a crew chief of one of the trucks of Glory to God Racing, and Team Veens have planned to release some statements, and are probably going to be releasing some statements here very shortly. I'm not sure if I'm going to react to those statements, but they're planning to release statements. Now, Tim Veens has been in the industry for a while, and there's been a lot of things I heard about Tim Veens. Let me just say this. Tim Veens has been part of some teams like CMI Motorsports. We all know the history of CMI Motorsports. And this is basically CMI Motorsports reincarnated to Glory to God Racing. This team's been involved in a lot of issues this year. Johnny Sauter was supposed to make 13 starts with the team this year, but they wasn't getting paid, so he didn't make a start after Daytona and really struggled. Then after that, they had Matt Jaskol supposed to have to be there for the whole entire season. They decided to drop Matt Jaskol despite having the funding to run with the team. They dropped him for whatever reason. This team's got a lot of issues that really do need to be resolved, in my honest opinion. And it's just a shame what's going on with Glory to God Racing, because they need to get whatever's going on sorted out for that team to survive long term. It's definitely a really crazy situation. If you want to read up into it, I suggest you do. And go read up Matthew Burrows' article on the 10ben.com on what's been going on with Glory to God Racing. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Martinsville tire test. Now, we've been very intrigued to see which drivers are going to be at the Martinsville tire test next week. Well, the drivers are going to be Austin Hendrick for Ford, Tyler Reddick for Chevy, and Kyle Busch for Toyota will be at the Martinsville tire test next week on Tuesday and Wednesday. Later this year in August, I believe in the middle portion of August here when the playoffs are supposed to happen, they will have a massive organizational test with 1 to 2 cars each. This Martinsville tire test is basically trying to figure out what they can do with the tires, basically trying to bring rubber onto the racetrack. There's also a lot of rumors that maybe rain tires tested at this test as well. And also there's rumors that they're maybe going to take the rear diffuser off the car as well, and see how it reacts and how the racing goes, and creates more potential horsepower in the car as well. This tire test is going to be something really interesting to watch, and something that we will probably be reacting to later this week when it does happen. But in all honesty, in all seriousness, I hope they can figure out what's going on with these short tracks. I think the short track racing, while I don't think it's been horrendous, I think there's some stuff that definitely needs to be worked on when it comes to the short tracks in NASCAR. I hope they do generally figure it out if they can. I think we have a perfect car, and I think if they can figure it out, I think that's going to be absolutely amazing, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about porpoising, as it was revealed yesterday that FIA has basically decided to go ahead and step in a plan to have it basically reduce the issues of porpoising starting this weekend at the Canadian Grand Prix, which will be the first time the Canadian Grand Prix has happened since 2019. One of the biggest issues with this car so far, with the F1 car, is that some teams have not really had this problem, but a lot of teams like Mercedes and Aston Martin, I believe Alfa Romeo as well, have been having massive issues with porpoising. Now, what is porpoising? Porpoising is basically bouncing up and down. Lewis Hamilton was complaining about pack pain because of the porpoising issues, because the car was basically bouncing up and down. And that's one of the biggest issues I've seen with the F1 car this year, is the porpoising issues. Now, the reason, like I said, that they're doing this is to fix this issue and basically help all the teams out. Now, some people are saying that they basically shouldn't be helping these teams out with this porpoising issue, but I 1000% disagree, because this is an issue that needs to be resolved. If drivers in F1 are getting actually hurt from something like this, then it does need to be fixed, and it does need to be resolved. So I know a lot of people are not basically fans of them basically fixing this porpoising issue, and it seems like they're giving Mercedes an advantage, which, let's be for real, Mercedes at this point is realistically not going to win the championship anyways at this point, because I think they're like almost 100 points out. George Russell's got a somewhat of a shot to win the championship, and Lewis Hamilton's pretty much out of it with only like 10 or 11 races to go. I would assume that Lewis is probably out of contention to win the championship. But I think this porpoising issue does need to be resolved, and maybe it'll help some of these teams going forward. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Australian Grand Prix. As it was revealed on Wednesday, the Australian Grand Prix will be on the F1 calendar until at least 2035 in Melbourne. Now, I believe the Australian Grand Prix had a contract, I think, through 2023 or 2024, but they have extended at least in the Melbourne area for the next 12 or 13 seasons. I think this is really, really huge for a lot of reasons. One of the big reasons basically being is because this track has hosted racing for a very, very long time, and the crowd this year especially was very, very massive. They said it's the largest crowd for an Australian event of all time. So I think, again, it makes a ton of sense for them to continue racing in that area and continue racing there. I think it's a massive, massive, huge win for the Australia. Continue racing there. I think the track's hosted good racing. Not always, but they've hosted some good racing over the years, and I think they deserve to once again host the Australian Grand Prix in the Melbourne area. I know maybe they can, in the future, move it downtown to Sydney at some point, or move it downtown to a different area, but in all seriousness, in all honesty, I'm very excited to see if they're basically bringing it back to the Melbourne area for a long-term future, and I think this is really, really awesome and great, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brody Kostecki. As in very shocking fashion, it was revealed, and TobyChristie.com reported this, that Brody Kostecki is eyeing racing in the NASCAR Cup Series potentially in 2023. Now, for a lot of you who do not know who Brody Kostecki is, Brody Kostecki currently competes in the Repco Supercar Series. But Brody Kostecki also has had some experience when he used to be called the K&N East and K&S West Series. He's actually had experience in the ARCA East Series. He's had some top fives in his own equipment. He's had some decent runs. He's been competing in supercars for a while now, and he hasn't won a race yet in supercars up to this point, but currently sits 5th in the championship and has had quite a few podiums so far this season. I think Brody Kostecki coming over to NASCAR would be massively huge. He'd probably be the next Australian driver to come over, considering we've had some Australian guys come over. Guys like Marcus Ambrose have raced in NASCAR in the past, and I think having another Aussie come into the sport would be great. Now, my question is, would they bring his own team in there, or maybe they could go to that 79 organization that's supposed to make their debut at Road America? Are they going to do that? That's one thing to watch, but maybe they go to the 79 car. Who knows? It's a Tara Samarkage driving at Road America. Who really knows at this point? But in all seriousness, in all honesty, I want to see Brody Kostecki do it. I think it would be amazing. It'd be really, really awesome. And in all honesty, I hope it really does happen that Brody Kostecki does make his potential debut in NASCAR Cup Series. Another driver coming in would be absolutely great. So it's very intriguing to see what happens, and maybe we'll see Brody Kostecki make his Cup Series debut in 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Parker Kligerman. Now, Parker Kligerman was on the NBC podcast that they do pretty much every single week, and he revealed at the 30-minute mark that he says he has seven offers from Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series teams to basically drive in future opportunities for the organization. Parker Kligerman, who currently works at NASCAR and NBC, is also a driver in NASCAR. He's getting part-time this year with the team of Henderson Motorsports, where he's been able to contend for wins so far this year. They've only ran 5 or 6 races so far this year, but he's been extremely competitive in pretty much every single time he's had a shot to win. Go back to Darlington earlier this year. They won a stage earlier this year and I believe finished in the top 5 in that race. Parker Kligerman is a very underrated driver, a driver that I feel like should be getting opportunities. He got a top 15 in a Gaunt Brothers race, was competing for a top 10 potentially in a Gaunt Brothers racing car that's absolutely struggled over the years. So I really want to see Parker Kligerman get these opportunities. Now, what are some of the 7 teams I think are probably looking? One of them I think is potentially Spire Motorsports. I think that's one potential team that maybe be looking at him perhaps. Maybe another team that could be looking at him for Xfinity, maybe RCR. I know RCR wanted to get signed Parker Kligerman, but I think sponsorship fell through near the end of that deal. There's some other teams I think maybe Kyle Busch Motorsports, maybe ThorSport perhaps, could be a team looking at him. Who really knows at this point, but I truly want to see Parker Kligerman get an opportunity race and a stock car. I think Parker is an extremely talented driver who really has been putting work in for a very long time, and I really want to see Parker get an opportunity here in the future. So I really do hope that he gets an opportunity to do it. I think he's a great driver, and I really think that he absolutely deserves an opportunity to race in the NASCAR Cup, race in NASCAR again, and get a great opportunity. So I really hope it happens, and I think there's a good chance that it will happen. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about electric cars. Now, Steve O'Donnell was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio and was talking about electric cars, and was talking about the noise issue. Now, a lot of fans, when they think about electric cars, a lot of fans are really nervous about electric cars because of the noise basically going away. Well, Steve O'Donnell basically came on the interview and basically says that the noise factor is the number one thing that they are definitely focused on when it comes to the electric cars. NASCAR has some plans to have some electrification on the upcoming engine package, as expected really sometime in 2023 or 2024. It's not been entirely exactly when it's going to be coming, but they're planning to have a new engine coming in the next few years. To also potentially a new manufacturer along with that potential coming, but there has to be revealed sometime in September if there's going to be a new manufacturer coming into NASCAR in 2024. I think 100% one of the big things for fans is electric thing. We've seen a lot of people nervous because a lot of people are worried that the noise factor goes away. That's going to ruin the sport. And I won't 100% with a lot of people on this one. I think that basically the noise factor needs to be one of the big things that NASCAR does focus on when it comes to electric cars. Because eventually, whether we all like it or not, NASCAR at some point will probably go fully electric. I don't think it'll be the next 15 or I don't think it won't be in the near future, but I think the long-term future, in the next 2 to 3 decades, we're probably going to be seeing fully electric NASCAR cars. Probably by 2045, 2050 is probably when I think we'll see it, but NASCAR is also working on an all-electric series as well that could be happening in the next few seasons as well. So I think it's really exciting news that they're looking at the noise factor. I think that is a very important thing to me as well, is what is going on with the noise, and I think glad that NASCAR is really taking that seriously, because I think that's important. I'm glad to see that NASCAR is focusing on that factor as well. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about elite credentials. Now, it was reported by Bob Pockrass and NASCAR announced some major changes a couple days ago when it comes to elite credentials. Now, NASCAR announced that they will be allowing a test of a driver with elite credentials from another form of racing to get familiar with the next-gen car. They must be entered for a Cup Series race to do the test. They also must be approved by NASCAR, and they must have elite credentials, and they basically have to do the test and pass the test as well for the specific track they're going to run this. Why is this a rule coming into play? One of the big reasons is because, one, you have Carson Marquet, who is supposed to be making his NASCAR Cup Series debut later this year. He's got a lot of F1 experience and also karting experience. Another big reason is because Kimi Räikkönen is supposed to drive the number 91 for Trackhouse Racing. I think it's really cool that they're doing this, and NASCAR is bringing in some rules for the league credentials. There's a lot of other rules you probably should go check out in the reports. I can't get into exactly everything, so we'll probably spend a lot of time talking about this, but it's kind of crazy that they're bringing a new rule in because of the elite situation with Kimi Räikkönen and Trackhouse Racing. Trackhouse Racing quintessentially has brought in a new rule into NASCAR, but I absolutely love the new rule. I think it's absolutely great to see that they're basically taking this very seriously. I mean, I think it's great that NASCAR is doing this, because you don't want Kimi Räikkönen just jumping into a next-gen car and struggling, because he would really struggle. I know Kimi's a great driver, and Trackhouse Racing is a great team, but I'm worried Kimi would struggle. So I think having him test this next-gen car at a track like Watkins Glen, which is going to be the race that they're going to run this year, that 91 Project 91 car, I think it makes a lot of sense that they're doing this, and I think it's great to see that they are making this move. In my honest opinion, I think it's great that they're bringing this into the sport, and honestly, a great move for NASCAR. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Jamie Little. It was revealed yesterday that Jamie Little is going to be calling play-by-play for the NASCAR Truck Series race at Knoxville. She'll be the first female lead commentator in NASCAR's top 3 divisions in the history. Now, for a lot of you who don't know, Jamie Little works as a pit reporter for Fox, but she's also been commentating ARCA races as well. A lot of people are also wondering what's going on with Vince Welch. Vince Welch is going to be basically, I believe, at a graduation. I think he's going to be going and seeing a graduation, which is why he will not be there. Also, a lot of people asking about Michael Waltrip, why he's not in the booth and Trevor Bayne's in the booth. The reason being is because Michael Waltrip is going to be competing in the SRX race at, I believe, at the Five Flag Speedway tomorrow, which should basically be going on at the same time as the Knoxville truck race. I am very excited to see this. I think Jamie Little's actually done a really solid job. I thought she was not great at first in the booth, but I think over time I've really grown to like what she's doing, and she does bring a lot of energy and excitement to the booth as well, and I think she'll do a better job than Vince Welch. I'll say this, I think the truck broadcast is going to be a lot better. Big question is how many people are going to tune in this race over the SRX race. That's one thing to really, really watch, but I will say I think it is very exciting to see that she is going to be making her debut in the top 3 divisions. I think this is big for diversity and for women as well, to see them making big moves. We've been seeing more diversity in the sport, and I think it's amazing to see that she's getting an opportunity to commentate her first Camping World Truck Series race. She's been doing a lot of the truck commentaries as a pit reporter, and every time she's on pit road, she's done an amazing job. She's been working hard for a very, very long time, and I think she absolutely deserves the opportunity to call. Just don't be like, just take it seriously, please, because Vince Walsh, I like Vince Walsh as a pit reporter. He's not a great commentator. I want her to take it seriously, because if she can do that, I think the sport is in a really, really good position and in really, really good shape if she can do well enough to bring a great broadcast and great commentary as well. So I hope she does well enough, and I hope she does great as a commentator for this event. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the NBC broadcast lineup for NASCAR and NBC. A lot of things are similar, but there are some changes coming to it this year as well. So let's talk about the lead commentators in the booth. So Rick Allen, Dale Jr., Jeff Burton, and Steve Letarte will be returning all to the booth, meaning that there will be a 4-man booth. Now, I do expect that at some point they will try having a 3-man booth and having Dale Jr. be the lead commentator for the races this season, but I think it's a very strong lineup. I'm worried that they're all going to over-scream against each other, but I do think they'll all do a very solid job. On the pre-race show and the post-race show, Marty Snyder is going to be hosting the pre- and post-race show alongside Dale Jarrett, Kyle Petty, and Brad Daugherty. Been wondering what's going on with Brad Daugherty. We haven't really seen him much, but he's going to be doing more with NBC, which I think he's done a really, really good job there. In the pit road for this year, Kimmy Kuhn, who works for NASCAR, basically works for NASCAR's team, she is going to be joining on pit road with NASCAR and NBC for select races alongside Marty Snyder, Kelly Sabatz, Dave Burns, Dylan Walsh, and Parker Kligerman. I'm very excited to see Kimmy Kuhn getting an opportunity to work there. She has done an amazing job working with the NASCAR team, and she's doing a lot of reporting out there. She was there for the next-gen testing throughout the few weeks that we had the next-gen testing. For the few months, I should say, she did the testing. She's done a great job, and she brings a lot of energy and a lot of excitement when she does these kind of broadcasts as well. So I think she is going to do a very, very great job. And I think you got a really strong lineup this year with the NBC broadcast team. I think this is a very strong broadcast lineup that you got right now. And I think it's really exciting to see it. This, again, I think this is going to be a really strong combination. I think Fox has a lot of good personnel, but I think NBC is going to have a stronger personnel lineup than Fox really had all of this year. And you have the same voices. Well, I think having the same voices, don't get me wrong, I think Fox's rotation of the booth was one of the better things they had. But I think having consistency and having the same people working together is great. And I'm just, again, also excited to see that Kimmy Kuhn is getting an opportunity to work on pit road. She's done a great job working for NASCAR's team, and I'm very excited to see that these are the people that are going to be working. I think it's amazing, really, really exciting news for sure, and I'm glad to see they've hired Kimmy Kuhn, and I think this is a great combination and great people to work together as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Project 91. Now, we haven't talked a lot about Project 91, really we've only talked about it a couple times, but Justin Marks was on Stacking Pennies this past week with Corey LaJoie. Of course, that's Corey LaJoie's podcast. And he says that the hope for Project 91 is to run 6 or 8 races each season starting next season, including Daytona 500. He also mentions Lewis Hamilton, Valentino Rossi, and Daniel Ricciardo as potential drivers in candidates that are potentially looking at driving the Project 91 car. I'll start off with the drivers. Lewis Hamilton, probably the greatest Formula 1 driver ever. He's won 102 and 103 Formula 1 races. He is a 7-time Formula 1 champion. I know this year's not going well for him, but Lewis Hamilton in the past has had aspirations in NASCAR, and I believe in the past has all said that he's been interested in maybe wanting to run the Daytona 500. So he's a great driver that would be a great opportunity to bring over. Valentino Rossi is an interesting case. Valentino Rossi is arguably the greatest MotoGP driver ever, and has been racing, I believe, in DTMs and in sports cars as well in Europe. So I think he'd be a very interesting to see what he can do. And Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo is a big fan of NASCAR. He's a big fan of Dale Jr. and Junior Motorsports. And Daniel Ricciardo is probably a big name that everybody really wants to see run this car. Now, they also was mentioned if Justin Marks was asked if he would be a driver that would be willing to do it. And Justin Marks says, nope, I'm done racing. That ship has sailed. I'm not going to be one of these drivers. There's also been other drivers that have been very interested in racing potentially for the Project 91 car. One of them, of course, being Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson has had interest in maybe running the double, and Justin Marks has said that if Jimmy Johnson would like to run the double, he would let Jimmy Johnson run the Project 91 car in the double, the Indy 500, and of course the Coke 600. And we know the Trackhouse Racing has been rumored over the last year or two. They've said they've had some interest in maybe run the Indy 500. Maybe they bring Jimmy Johnson on because it's unclear if Jimmy's going to be back at Chip Ganassi Racing in the 2023 season, but he would like to return. Another driver has been mentioned. I'll say Marcus Ericsson. Marcus Ericsson, of course, the 2022 Indianapolis 500 champion and current points leader in the IndyCar Championship. Marcus Ericsson has had aspirations to race in NASCAR, and he said that he's been taking a love into American racing. So he would be another driver that I'd be very intrigued to see what he could do. I think it'd be great to have him. Another driver that's shown interest in racing in NASCAR is Julio Castroneves. Julio Castroneves currently drives for Meyershank Racing in the IndyCar Series. He hasn't had as good of a year as he had last year. Of course, he won the Indy 500 last year, but he also won the Rolex 24 earlier this year. And on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio earlier this year, he did actually mention that he has had some interest in maybe racing on a road course or maybe running the Daytona 500 as well. He could be a great option. I think there's so many drivers they really could bring into this ride that it could make this ride really interesting. But I love the fact that they're going to run more races next year. I would also think Darian Grubb, who's been working on the engineering side of things for Trackhouse Racing, would probably be the crew chief for every single race. But I love the fact that this Project 91 group thing is a thing. I think it's just they really want to bring a lot of F1 drivers from other forms of racing as well into this car. I would love this car to be a full-time opportunity for drivers in different forms of racing. Bring drivers from the dirt world. Why not? Make this a full-time opportunity. Make this a charter car, but I think 6-8 races is a great thing. I am going to release a video, by the way, at some point next week, probably talking about this and drivers. I like seeing this car, but I think it's going to be intriguing, and a lot of brainstorming is going to come to play with this Project 91 car. So I think it's exciting to see what Justin Marks is saying, and I hope we get to see more drivers in the future in this car. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode, as we're going to talk about the 2023 NASCAR schedule. Now, we've already talked about the 2023 NASCAR schedule just a little bit. I made a video on it yesterday, but according to reported yesterday, and NBC kind of caught on this, Steve O'Donnell says that NASCAR is looking to release the 2023 Cup Series schedule in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Steve O'Donnell says that they hope to have one new big event added to the schedule for next season, but did not go into details on that big event. So let's talk about what is confirmed so far for the 2023 schedule. We know the Daytona 500 is going to be on February 19th, and tickets, by the way, went on sale today for that event. The season finale, once again, will be hosted at Phoenix on November the 5th. Gateway Worldwide Technology Raceway, while it wasn't officially confirmed what date it's going to be exactly, that track will be returning to the Cup schedule in 2023. The Texas All-Star Race is coming back next year. Whether we like it or not, the Texas All-Star Race is coming back. COTA has been rumored to potentially come back next year, though it has not been 100% confirmed. It's expected to come back next year. Bristol Dirt is going to once again happen on Easter Sunday, I believe, next year. It will be a night race on Easter. It will most likely be on April 9th next year, meaning that I would think Martinsville and Bristol will probably be swapped. Another track, Dover, is expected to return to the 2023 schedule. In fact, they're expected to return to schedule for many, many years to come. We're starting to get more and more details. Oh, and last thing, the Busch Light Clash is also confirmed to once again be returning in 2023 as well on the same weekend it was this year on February the 5th. The schedule is really starting to come together. I believe the schedule will be released sometime in August of this year. That's when we've been hearing rumors, is that the goal is to have the schedule out by August. It could be out a little bit later, but I would expect it will be released in August. Now, what is this all big event that NASCAR is teasing? I think it is going to be either one of two events. One, it's either going to be an international race at a track like Circuit Gilles Villeneuve or Sundar in Mexico City. Or it's going to be the Chicago Street Course race that has been rumored. Now, I think there's been a lot of holdup on that Chicago Street Course because of the fact there's a lot of politics, and the Chicago politics are not the greatest thing. But NASCAR has been wanting to have a street course race in a different city for a very, very long time. Whether it's in Chicago, whether it's in Mexico City, whether it's in Los Angeles, it doesn't really matter. They would really love to see a race there in the Chicago area or a different area for street course race. And remember, they had an iRacing race that happened during the iRacing Pro Invitational at Chicago Street Course. Now, I don't think the layout that they have for the track really is that great, so they would have to change some things for the layout. That probably would not be the layout they would end up using. But I think when it comes to the 2023 schedule, I'm very intrigued to see, because NASCAR said going forward long term, they want to make some major, major bold moves. And let's be honest, NASCAR has made some bold moves. Whether we agree with it or not, some of the moves they've been making over the last few years have been really, really exciting to see. And I really want to see the schedule just expand. I like to see a stadium concept. I know some YouTubers like Eric Estep and some of the YouTubers have been mentioning this, but a lot of YouTubers really want to see the stadium concept really come to fruition, and I think it should continue to come to fruition. I think why not go to like New York and have a stadium? You can't have every stadium run, but instead of having the Texas All-Star race, why not bring the All-Star race into the Texas, into the Jerry's world? Why not bring it in there? I think it'd be great to have it in Dallas, and you can get rid of one of the Texas races. You also could, theoretically, why not have Chicago and Speedway on the schedule once again, and have the three races where basically Chicago, you have a Chicago trifecta. You have Chicago Street Course, you have the All-Star race happening at Chicago Stadium, and then finally, of course, you have the final race being at Chicago as well as a really big trifecta. That would be a great trifecta right there. Another thing I would expect in the future is I think there will be a race in Portland next year. I think NASCAR is going to go to Portland in 2023 for the Cup Series. The Xfinity Series cannot just hold its own at Portland. I think you need to have the Cup Series as a companion event. I also think there's a very big possibility for the Xfinity Series that there could be a possibility of a triple header where you have the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series all on the same weekend. I know some people want IndyCar to be on the same weekend, but I just don't think right now it is realistic, especially with the playoffs kind of getting a crunch time. Unless you want to move Gateway to the playoffs and replace Texas, I'd be definitely okay with that. But we're going to have to watch see what happens with the schedule in 2023, because I think there's going to be some changes that happen. We know some things that are already confirmed for 2023, but there is some big things that are to come in the near future. And now we're going to jump on to the final story of today's episode as we are talking about Daniel Suarez. Now, I don't think anybody really knew about this, but Daniel Suarez's contract right now only goes through the 2022 season. Now, Ty Norris is speaking to the media and basically speaking to NASCAR's on NBC's podcast, the Motor Mouse podcast, and Ty Norris says that there is a 100% chance that Daniel Suarez is going to return to Trackhouse Racing in 2023. Daniel Suarez, of course, who just picked up his first career Cup Series victory at Sonoma this past weekend, has been a driver that's had a pretty solid year in the Cup Series, currently sits 17th in the points, and has 3 top 5s and I think 6 top 10s so far this year. He's kind of a little bit not as good as Ross Chastain's been this year, but Daniel Suarez is having a pretty admirable season, and right now is on the verge of being a top 16 in the regular season points. Now, he currently right off the playoffs were to start now would be sitting 7th in the points, but let's talk about Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez really has a team that really is committed to having him. For basically the beginning of his career, really for the first 4 or 5 years in the Cup Series, he did not have a team that was really committed to him. Look at his time at Joe Gibbs Racing the first 2 years. He had multiple crew chief changes in his rookie year and did have a decent year, but not an amazing year. 2018, he took a step backwards. He did have a really big race at Pocono where he nearly won that race, but had a bad restart as Eric Jones kind of cost him an opportunity there. After getting booted from Joe Gibbs Racing so Mark Truex Jr. could get into the 19 car, in 2019, he went over to Stewart-Haas Racing, had an okay year, actually had a better statistical season they had in both years at Joe Gibbs Racing, but still missed the playoffs, not by much, but missed the playoffs that season. after getting kicked out of Suarez Racing so Cole Custer could take over, he went over to Gaunt Brothers Racing and had not a terrible year for this car, but not a great year. It was almost irrelevant. And a lot of people thought Daniel Suarez should go back to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Well, Justin Marks and Trackhouse Racing took a chance on him, and they had a pretty solid first year as a team. While he did finish 25th in the regular season points that year, he still ended up having a really big race at Bristol Dirt and a couple other big races as well. And this year has been a career year for Daniel Suarez and has been really competitive. And he could have won more races this year. Daniel Suarez could have won a race at Fontana if he didn't make that bad mistake near the end of the race. He had probably the fastest car near the end of the Coke 600. Better than Ross Chastain, better than Kyle Larson, but unfortunately got involved in that wreck. He was really fast at Talladega, led to early portions of that race. For overheating issues, I think, came into play. And I think the other big race was Coda. He led the first stage of that race and dominated that stage. But unfortunately for Daniel Suarez, it's a bad break in that race. It's great to see that Daniel Suarez is expected to come back. I think he deserves it. Sponsors really want him. You've got a country that's willing to commit. And I think Daniel Suarez long-term with this team will be extremely successful. I think Daniel Suarez has been an extremely successful driver with Trackhouse Racing so far this year. He's finally got a team that's committed to him. Yes, he's probably the second driver right now at that team. But I think we're not at the end of seeing Daniel Suarez win races even this season. I think with them finally winning a Cup Series race, because now they don't have to worry about points anymore, they can go all hell break loose, and Suarez can start picking off some wins. I think Suarez has so much potential. I mean, people say he's a bust, but Daniel Suarez is a 2016 NASCAR Xfinity Series champion, for Christ's sakes. I mean, come on. Daniel Suarez is not a bad driver. He's been a solid driver this year. He's been better than Austin Cindric. He's been better than Denny Hamlin. He's been better than a lot of drivers this season. Has been more consistent than some drivers this season as well. So I think he absolutely deserves and 1,000% deserves to return his team in 2023. How long will the contract extension be? I think Daniel Suarez will at least get a 3 or 4 year extension. I think they want to keep him long term. I think he's a project driver for the team, and I really do believe that they want to keep Daniel Suarez at this team long term going forward. So I really am excited to see what they're going to do with Daniel Suarez long term, but I do agree with a lot of people that they need to keep him on this team for many, many years, especially since he brings a lot of sponsorship and funding. Look at a lot of the sponsors, CommScope, Coca-Cola, and some other brands will probably leave if Daniel Suarez left the team, but they do not want to get rid of him, and Suarez does not want to leave the team. And I think it's great. I know people would like to see guys like Tyler Reddick and Eric Jones get an opportunity to drive for Trackhouse Racing. They probably want those guys taking over for Suarez, but especially after Suarez got his first career win, he's not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. He's not leaving the team. He's a great driver, and like I mentioned, he absolutely deserves to return to Trackhouse Racing, especially with him having a really solid season in the Cup Series. He's a great driver and 1,000% deserves to return to the team. So anyway, that is your today's NASCAR and other motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on pages as well. Let's get over that and comment with your thoughts on today's video. Do you think Daniel Suarez deserves a return to Trackhouse Racing or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the other stories, including the 2023 schedule and the Project 91 story? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, we're going to be having either the race review from the Truck Series race or the SRX review. More than likely, it will be the SRX race review from Five Flags Speedway as the SRX makes its glorious return. Sunday of this week, we'll probably have the F1 review from the Canadian GP. And then Monday of this week, depending on how much news we have, we more than likely are going to have a video talking basically about what drivers could drive the Project 91 car. So that's going to be coming later this week. I cannot wait to release some more content for you guys. We're growing our YouTube channel in a pretty big way, and I appreciate the support. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.